Welcome to another reading and correcting of Bottom Rung. With me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. Today, we are doing chapter. They walk through the town, cross all their injuries, and give them as much space as at least one fight happened as people bumped into one another, and a merchant tent was brought down before the adventurers. Tibs didn't see what happened to the brawlers, but up the image of a broken hand covered in ice. On the other side of town, Ariana left him. Whoa, what? Properly set up. On the other side of town, Ariana left him to the archers practice on their practice. Unsure what else to do. Not interested in risking seeing what adventurers did. Those fighting, he headed for the area the rogues. Only a few groups were left, and old rogue who had led his group was packing locks and chest. He noticed Tibs and made a face. Got in a fight, go tell one of those good for nothing adventurers. I got hurt in the dungeon. No one said who to see about my injury. He expected to simply injure them. He could, but how would those more gravely hurt? Expect me to believe you were in a dungeon? And said mockingly. Tibs took a lock out of the chest and unlocked it in a few seconds. Almost threw it at the feet, but cut himself and handed it for inspection. The man didn't remember him, and the inspection would do. The old rogue looked it over. Suppose being able to open locks doesn't require being big and menacing. He didn't sound impressed, but the corner of his lips curled up slightly. Being small does have other advantages. He placed the lock back in the chest. Take it they don't have clerics there yet. Not. Continued before Tibs could ask what a cleric would look like. Bring them in. Dungeon graduates, and they start letting in the nobles. One of those to die outside the dungeon, and finally complain about taking care of their precious children. But and Tibs took a step. He didn't like nobles either. Hadn't expected this kind of anger from well off as the rogue before. The man patted himself down, took something out of a pocket. All this while I get something. Took it, a crystal the size of his thumb, like the one the rogue that had stood by the entrance. Training ground they had had. It was a different shape, and Tibbs realized it was with some blue or possibly green in it. The color seemed to shift as he turned it back on his head. Old apples. Didn't think it had any real value. Think, startled, then too focused on the crystal, hadn't noticed the rogue returning. The man was looking at it intently, shrugged and handed it back. The man knew its value more than Tibbs would. Than Tibbs would, since it was his. The man handed Tibbs a small glass vial with a greenish liquid in it. Drink that. Eyed it. It. Capped it. And the content stank. A healing potion. What else would it be? Said and no longer held the crystal. Tibbs cursed silently for letting himself be. Whatever pocket it went in, it contained other things more valuable. Not that he intended on picking them. Be an easy way to lose a hand or more in place. Still, he could size with trying to determine his motivation. The old rogue sighed. What's your name? Tibbs, after deliberating, giving a false one. Well, Tibbs, I don't want you dead, unless you find a way to get on the wrong side of the other of one of the other stuff seemed to search for a word. What do you call it? Rogue? Offered, given his name. So that couldn't be what he was asking for. Those of you going in the dungeon said with a look, claim Tibs should have known what he meant. In my days, we called ourselves explorers. I was back. Runners, dungeon, and frowned. And unless you've met an enemy of another runner, the one here wants you dead. So there's no reason that would be poison. Okay? What do you want for it? Nothing. Given. I do not miss being a society rat. Then he smiled. Tibbs, that is included in what I do. Can't train properly if you're. And while there is something to be gained in learning to function while injured, that's for later. Still suspicious, Tibbs emptied the content in his mouth and regretted it immediately. Tried to spit out the foul-tasting liquid, but the old rogue got his hand over his mouth. Swallow it. Doesn't work otherwise. And was stronger than he looked, and Tibbs had no other option. He swallowed and immediately felt better. Even the need to throw up was gone. That's part of why we can afford to give them away, he said. Not the good stuff, but it still works. Important thing, right? He took the empty vial, and if it assuaged your front sense, the guild's paying me to train a lot of you. This is over. I'll be able to retire to a small house in a small town. Oh, trouble. Too old. Gallivanting a dungeon, killing monsters, saving princess. So you see, I'm getting something out of this. Not just from you. Just Tip scratch at the itch under the dried blood and little smooth skin as it flaked away. Now, since you've gone and explored, don't worry about having to work building town. I expect you need it after. Rub more of the dried blood up, shuddering as a little as shuddering a little at the memory of the rat's claw biting him. Teach me how to fight. And raised an eyebrow. That. You're a rogue. Let the others do the fighting. Dungeon didn't care what I am. It tried to kill me just as hard as the others. And after our fighter died, I didn't have much choice, but how? Best not to let shame show. I was older when I explored my first dungeon. Armed rightly. Everyone on my team had solid experience, roles. What you have to do is make sure the others know that you aren't going to get anywhere in the dungeon without you. Important one. It's their job to make sure you stay alive. If they won't understand that, find another team. Got it? Tibbs doubted that was right. But he'd seen everyone had an important part to play in the dungeon. The dungeon, yes, the fighter would take the attack, but what could Tibbs pull off, claiming he was more important? Wouldn't the fighter just go look for another rogue? And if he didn't, wouldn't the others on the team just not want him? But he couldn't argue with the older rogue, sacrificing his training just to claim he knew better. Tibbs knew he didn't. The old rogue had lived to an old age, so he had to more than Tibbs. So he left and headed towards the fighters' area. They would know how to fight. One of them would be willing to teach. He realized the problem with his idea once he watched them train. Swords were big, able to even lift one of them. They allowed to didn't assign a knife, didn't because of the size. The rogue tried to remember if the rogue on the other side carried a sword. He hadn't noticed any weapon. There was a note. He needed to stop being distracted by all the new things. Back in the habit of noticing it. The only way to survive the street. He needed to remember that no matter what this place looked like, it was he walked around the town of tents, outskirts, workers were constructing wooden buildings. Foreigners helped, supervised by adventurers. Hopefully, it would the crowding. Paying close attention, he noticed a black band on his left wrist. Others, covered, dramatically, tried to help. Tibs tried to help with the work, but was told to go back to his parents. The adventurers, who had to know he was a runner, kept their eyes on their wares before they tent. Being adventurers to keep the crowds from getting close, chased Tibs away, and he approached, threatening to venture loose on him. The merchant knew how to tell thieves from the rest in the town. The adventurers, again, only think they'd do anything that came to it, but he didn't. If a merchant could tell he was a thief, the adventurer would catch him. Act of taking. Wanted to keep. Needed to. He was going to keep. Over the next week, he and ate with Ariana would arrange it. She was allowed to help build the town. He kept looking for the fight. Ariana offered. Bo was almost taller. He didn't see himself using it. Then he pulled it to join a team. That sorcerer demanded as the adventurer brought Tibs to his. He was tall and held himself like someone who had a lot of coins and was used to being paid. "You're a rogue," he said before walking away. Armored shirt and gotten sorcerer down at Tibs. "Are you even any good?" Strun replied, not looking. "Yeah, hiding behind everyone else, like every thief out there." Fighter next to the sorcerer's thug. This marked him as the kind who was confident only when someone else took the lead. Hide behind. Wanted to show scars for injuries to put hidden if he was proud of how he behaved, but the potion had healed his skin smooth. "Don, why don't you give us some slack?" Of the two archers said. The others seemed torn between joining in the snickering and being. Not like they gave him a choice. The sorcerer glared at the archer. "Who's asking your opinion, Langley?" "Definitely not you. You never need another's opinions. Everything, right?" Don't pay too much attention to Don's tone. He likes to think that because he is smart, he's better than the rest of us. Of course, he wasn't smart enough to avoid ending up here, so just like the rest. Don was ready to lay in on the archer, but the adventurer directed them to the entrance. Good. The sorcerer took the lead, and Tibbs had the feeling that if he'd been able to, he would have walked too fast for the pup. They made it to the first room, and Dud gave instruction while Tibbs looked over the floor. "All right, we're going along the wall. It's the safe path. Langley, since you're like taking the lead, you're first. Maelstrom, you're next. Go after. Janae, after me, and the thief can hide behind us." "Don't," Tibbs said as the archer stepped into. "I give the order," Dawn stated. "I'm the rogue. Give me time to see if the triggers are. I've been through this room twice already." Sorcerer snarled. "I know the layout. I'm not going to have a useless kid tell me what to do. Langley, go." Sure, look from Dawn to the kid. "I want him to." "I gave you an order," Sorcerer said through clenched teeth. Langley, "I'm not your lackey. That's Mel there. I'm here because we just barely survived our last run and they think we're working together. Trust me, Dawn. They'd ask for my opinion. I wouldn't be here right now. Going to regret this." "Mel, step against the wall. It's a safe path." "Don't," Tibbs repeated. "It's not safe." "Shut up, kid. Not go, or I'm going to throw you in the room and you can deal with the lances by yourself." Tibbs took a step forward and clenched on his. But Langley put a hand on his shoulder. "Not worth it. Trust me. Let Dunn do what he wants. It's going to be a lot easier on everyone." "What?" Pointed to trigger tiles along the length of the wall. "Dunn said he knows what he's doing." Ryder stepped in. staying against the wall. Not there! Tibbs yelled as the man almost put a foot on the trigger tile, and had to hold himself against the wall to avoid falling. Shut up! I'm going to blast you, Don threatened. You can't attack me, replied. Sure, who's gonna now? Tibbs looked at the two archers, and Langley shrugged. It was only on his side as far as not putting his life in danger allowed. I talked back to them. Attack him, realized. Shoulders slumped. Thought teams work together. Going, Dad, keeping his eyes on Tibbs. The click happened, and the gasp from the fighter. The slap took him off his feet. Don't you ever talk back to me like that, Don turned to the dying fighter. You idiot! I told you to stay by the wall. There, the sorcerer's back as he shifted it to Langley, who only raised an eyebrow in response. He wasn't on Tibbs' side. That was clear now. The other archers seemed embarrassed not to have done anything. Don cursed as the fighter disappeared. Why didn't any of you go in? I just lost money. You're so sure of yourself. Why don't you go? Why didn't you go? He barely managed to keep his mouth shut. I didn't want him to do anything when he slapped him down. Instead, he crossed the room as confidently as he could, watching for what the triggers were. This is your fault. The sorcerer dropped his robe and amulet on him. If I'd gotten a competent thief, I would have made it to the third room. Instead, because of you, I'm getting nothing out of this run. It was slower to take off his shirt, tatters of it that were left. He heard from the scratches and bite he'd. Without their fighter, Don had proclaimed that Tibbs was the one to clear the rats. When Tibbs tried to point out he didn't know how to fight, the sorcerer pushed him in among boulders, and rats jumped on him. He barely heard the arguing as he did his best to keep the rats off. Then arrows flew over him, and someone grabbed his leg and pulled him out. The time he had opened his eyes, it was only him and the sorcerer by the entrance of the room. Don looked ready to blast him, energy crackling. But he glanced at the trap room and faded away. He had Tibbs guide him through the trigger, complaining the entire time about how slow he was. And on the other side, he rushed off, looking pissed when the adventurers kept him from heading to the table while Tibbs stumbled towards them. The woman on the other side of the table looked bored as still ranting about everything. She was an archer, based on a bow at her back, more elaborate than Mariana used. Tibbs slowly made his way back to the town and Rogue's training ground for that horrible thing. This 6 of bottom rung. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, it is available for free on Royal Road. If you want to support me, get access early to the chapters that is on my Patreon. If you want to listen to these live, it's on Twitch Thursday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.